Question 1. To address the challenge of deploying a Cisco Meraki solution for a client operating in the financial services sector in the United States, which approach best ensures adherence to relevant regulatory frameworks such as those mandated by the SEC and FINRA, while also meeting the client's stated need for rapid network modernization. Option A. Conduct a comprehensive assessment of the client's specific regulatory obligations under SEC and FINRA guidelines, and then design and implement the Meraki solution with security and compliance controls integrated from the initial deployment stages. Option B. Implement a highly complex and feature-rich Meraki configuration to proactively address all potential regulatory concerns, even if it significantly delays the deployment timeline and increases initial costs for the client. Option C. Assume that standard Meraki security defaults are sufficient for financial services compliance and proceed with deployment without a detailed regulatory review, focusing solely on network performance metrics. Option D. Prioritize the client's request for immediate deployment by implementing a baseline Meraki configuration and deferring detailed security and compliance reviews to a post-deployment phase. Correct answer is D. Prioritize the client's request for immediate deployment by implementing a baseline Meraki configuration and deferring detailed security and compliance reviews to a post-deployment phase. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in IT consulting, balancing client demands for rapid deployment with the need for robust security and compliance. The Cisco Meraki solution specialist must navigate this by understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the client's industry and location. For this exam, we assume the jurisdiction is the United States, and therefore, relevant regulations would include those from the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. For publicly traded companies, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for healthcare organizations, and the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, for entities handling credit card information. The specialist's primary responsibility is to ensure the deployed solution adheres to these mandates, protecting sensitive data and avoiding legal repercussions for the client. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the client's specific regulatory obligations and integrating these requirements into the Meraki solution design from the outset. This proactive stance ensures compliance is built in, rather than being an afterthought. It demonstrates professional diligence by prioritizing the client's long-term security and legal standing. This aligns with ethical obligations to provide competent advice and to act in the client's best interest, which includes safeguarding them from regulatory penalties. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize speed of deployment over compliance. For instance, bypassing security configurations or neglecting to implement necessary logging and auditing features to meet a tight deadline would be a significant regulatory failure. This could lead to data breaches, non-compliance with SEC reporting requirements, HIPAA violations, or PCI DSS non-adherence, all of which carry substantial fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to assume a one-size-fits-all security policy without understanding the client's specific data handling practices and regulatory context. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and could result in a solution that is either over-engineered and costly or critically underprotected, exposing the client to unacceptable risks. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with a comprehensive discovery phase to identify all relevant regulatory frameworks. This should be followed by a risk assessment to understand how the proposed Meraki solution will impact the client's compliance posture. The design phase must then explicitly incorporate controls and configurations to meet these identified requirements. Finally, ongoing monitoring and auditing are crucial to maintain compliance as the environment evolves. Question 2. The control framework reveals a divergence in opinion between the IT security team, advocating for an immediate and comprehensive Zero Trust Network Access (ZTNA) implementation across the entire organization, and several department heads who express concerns about potential disruption to critical business operations and user productivity. The IT security team cites the increasing threat landscape and the need for robust, granular access controls. The department heads, however, emphasize the need for a phased rollout that allows for user training and the identification of essential business workflows that might be inadvertently impacted by overly restrictive policies, which approach best balances security imperatives with operational realities and stakeholder needs. Option A. Allow each department to self-manage their ZTNA configurations based on their perceived needs, with the IT security team providing only high-level guidance. Option B. Implement the ZTNA solution immediately across all departments as planned by the security team, with a post-implementation review to address any critical issues that arise. Option C. Prioritize the ZTNA implementation for departments with the highest perceived security risk, while deferring broader rollout until a comprehensive impact assessment and pilot program with key business units are completed. Option D. Postpone the ZTNA implementation indefinitely until all department heads can provide written guarantees that their operations will not be affected in any way. The correct answer is B. Implement the ZTNA solution immediately across all departments as planned by the security team, with a post-implementation review to address any critical issues that arise. Explanation. The control framework reveals a common challenge in network deployments, balancing the need for robust security with the operational requirements of various stakeholders. In this scenario, the IT security team prioritizes a stringent, zero-trust model, which is commendable from a security posture perspective. However, this approach can inadvertently create significant operational friction for end users and business units if not implemented with consideration for their workflows and access needs. The challenge lies in translating security policy into practical, usable network access, ensuring that legitimate business functions are not unduly hindered, while maintaining a strong defense against threats. The correct approach emphasizes a phased, risk-based implementation that involves active collaboration with business stakeholders. This aligns with best practices for network security and compliance, as it ensures that security controls are not only technically sound, but also operationally viable and aligned with business objectives. By engaging with department heads and end users, the IT team can identify critical applications and workflows, understand their access requirements, and tailor security policies accordingly. This collaborative method fosters buy-in, reduces the likelihood of unintended disruptions, and allows for the gradual introduction of stricter controls where they are most needed and least impactful on productivity. This approach is also implicitly supported by general IT governance principles that advocate for aligning IT strategy with business strategy, ensuring that technology serves to enable, not obstruct, organizational goals. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate, blanket enforcement of the zero-trust model, without adequate consultation, risks alienating users and disrupting critical business operations. This can lead to workarounds that bypass security controls, creating new vulnerabilities. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, while the intent is security, the failure to consider the impact on business continuity and user productivity could be seen as a lapse in due diligence. It fails to uphold the principle of proportionality, where security measures should be commensurate with the risks and not excessively burdensome. Another incorrect approach that involves deferring all access decisions to individual users or departments without centralized policy or oversight creates a chaotic and insecure environment. This abdication of responsibility is a clear failure of the IT security function and can lead to significant compliance and security breaches. It directly contravenes the fundamental responsibility of the IT department to establish and enforce a secure network infrastructure. Finally, an approach that prioritizes speed of deployment over thoroughness and stakeholder engagement, leading to a poorly configured or inadequately tested security framework, is also professionally unsound. This can result in security gaps or performance issues that undermine the very objectives of the deployment. It demonstrates a lack of professional rigor and a failure to adhere to established project management and security implementation methodologies. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with understanding the business context and stakeholder needs. This involves proactive communication, risk assessment that considers operational impact, and a phased implementation strategy. Security should be viewed as an enabler of business, not a barrier, and this requires a balanced approach that integrates technical expertise with an understanding of organizational dynamics and user experience. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that the IT department is proposing to deploy Cisco Meraki solutions across the organization to enhance network agility and reduce operational overhead. However, The proposal lacks a detailed analysis of how this deployment will affect the organization's adherence to data privacy regulations and existing security compliance frameworks. Which of the following represents the most appropriate next step to ensure responsible and compliant implementation? Option A. Proceed with the Cisco Meraki deployment as planned, assuming the vendor's security features adequately address all compliance needs, and conduct a post-implementation review. Option B. Immediately halt the deployment and initiate a comprehensive impact assessment that evaluates the proposed Cisco Meraki solutions against all relevant regulatory requirements, security policies, and operational processes, involving key stakeholders from IT, security, legal, and business units. Option C. Prioritize the cost savings and operational efficiency benefits of the Cisco Meraki solution and address any compliance concerns that arise after the initial rollout. Option D. Delegate the responsibility for compliance verification to the Cisco Meraki vendor, trusting their expertise to ensure the solution meets all regulatory obligations. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the Cisco Meraki deployment as planned, assuming the vendor's security features adequately address all compliance needs, and conduct a post-implementation review. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IT governance where a new technology, like Cisco Meraki, is being introduced without a thorough understanding of its potential impact on existing operational processes, security postures, and compliance requirements. The challenge lies in balancing the benefits of modernization with the risks of disruption and non-compliance. A rushed or incomplete impact assessment can lead to unforeseen security vulnerabilities, operational inefficiencies, and regulatory breaches, all of which can have significant financial and reputational consequences. The need for careful judgment arises from the interconnectedness of network infrastructure with business operations and regulatory obligations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive impact assessment that systematically evaluates the proposed Cisco Meraki deployment against all relevant regulatory frameworks and internal policies. This includes identifying potential impacts on data privacy, network security, operational continuity, and compliance with industry-specific regulations. By engaging stakeholders from IT, security, legal, and business units, and by documenting findings and mitigation strategies, this approach ensures that risks are identified, understood, and addressed proactively. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and risk management, which mandate due diligence before implementing significant technological changes. It demonstrates a commitment to responsible technology adoption and adherence to the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, crucial for maintaining a secure and compliant environment. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the Cisco Meraki solution without a formal impact assessment, relying solely on vendor claims, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical due diligence processes, potentially exposing the organization to risks it has not adequately identified or prepared for. This approach neglects the organization's responsibility to understand and manage its own risk profile, which is a fundamental tenet of good governance. Focusing solely on the cost savings and operational efficiency benefits of Cisco Meraki, while neglecting security and compliance implications, is another regulatory and ethical failure. This narrow focus creates a blind spot for potential vulnerabilities and non-compliance issues that could outweigh the perceived benefits. It demonstrates a lack of holistic risk management and a disregard for the organization's broader responsibilities. Adopting a wait-and-see approach, where the impact assessment is deferred until after deployment, is also a failure. This reactive strategy is inherently risky, as it allows potential issues to manifest and cause damage before they are addressed. It violates the principle of proactive risk management and can lead to costly remediation efforts and potential regulatory penalties. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach technology deployments with a structured and risk-based methodology. This involves 1. Understanding the business and regulatory context. Identify all applicable laws, regulations, and internal policies that govern the organization's operations and data. 2. Conducting a thorough impact assessment. Systematically evaluate how the proposed technology will affect existing systems, processes, security controls, and compliance obligations. This should involve cross-functional teams. 3. Identifying and prioritizing risks. Based on the impact assessment, identify potential risks and prioritize them based on their likelihood and potential severity. 4. Developing mitigation strategies for identified risks. Define and implement appropriate controls and countermeasures. 5. Documenting and communicating findings. Maintain clear records of the assessment, identified risks and mitigation plans, and communicate these to relevant stakeholders. 6. Continuous monitoring and review. Regularly review the effectiveness of implemented controls and reassess risks as the technology and regulatory landscape evolve. Question 4. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a new cloud-based collaboration service is being considered for rapid deployment to enhance team productivity. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with data protection regulations and maintains the organization's security posture prior to and during its integration with existing Cisco Meraki managed infrastructure? Option A. Proceed with the immediate deployment of the new service to meet business needs and address any security or compliance concerns that arise afterward through ad hoc adjustments. Option B. Deploy the new service and then attempt to retroactively apply security policies and configurations to the existing Cisco Meraki managed network to mitigate any identified risks. Option C. Implement the new service using the vendor's recommended default security settings and assume they are sufficient for the organization's compliance needs. Option D. Conduct a thorough security and compliance review of the new service, ensuring it meets defined security policies and regulatory requirements, and configure Cisco Meraki policies to enforce access controls and data handling for the service before and during deployment. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough security and compliance review of the new service, ensuring it meets defined security policies and regulatory requirements, and configure Cisco Meraki policies to enforce access controls and data handling for the service before and during deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network security and compliance, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational realities of a dynamic business environment. The challenge lies in ensuring that security policies, particularly those related to access control and data protection, remain effective and compliant even as new devices and services are introduced. The rapid pace of technological adoption, coupled with the potential for shadow IT or misconfigurations, creates a significant risk of security vulnerabilities and regulatory noncompliance. The need for immediate business functionality can often conflict with the thoroughness required for proper security vetting and policy enforcement. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and integrated security lifecycle management process. This means that before any new device or service is deployed, it undergoes a comprehensive security review. This review should assess its potential impact on the existing security posture, ensure it aligns with established security policies, e.g., data encryption, access controls, logging, and verify compliance with relevant regulations. For Cisco Meraki solutions, this would involve leveraging the platform's built-in security features and management capabilities to enforce these policies consistently. This approach ensures that security is not an afterthought but a foundational element of any deployment, thereby minimizing risk and maintaining regulatory adherence. It embodies the principle of security by design. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing a new service without a prior security review is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It bypasses critical risk assessment steps, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or breaches, which directly violates data protection regulations. This approach also demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to uphold professional responsibility in safeguarding organizational assets and client information. Deploying a new device and then attempting to retroactively apply security policies is inefficient and inherently risky. It assumes that the initial deployment was secure, which is often not the case. This reactive stance increases the likelihood of vulnerabilities remaining unaddressed for a period, leading to potential compliance violations and security incidents. It signifies a failure to implement a robust security governance framework. Relying solely on the vendor's default security settings without independent verification is also a flawed approach. While vendors provide baseline security, these defaults may not meet the specific compliance requirements or the organization's risk appetite. This oversight can lead to non-compliance with industry-specific regulations or internal security standards, as it abdicates the responsibility for ensuring adequate protection. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network security and compliance. This involves establishing clear policies and procedures for the introduction of new technologies. Critical step is to integrate security assessments into the procurement and deployment lifecycle. This includes defining security requirements, conducting vulnerability assessments, and ensuring that all deployed solutions can be effectively managed and monitored through the chosen platform, such as Cisco Meraki. Regular audits and reviews of security configurations and compliance status are also essential to adapt to evolving threats and regulatory landscapes. Question 5. Consider a scenario where a critical network performance issue is impacting user productivity, and the IT team needs to quickly identify the root cause. The Cisco Meraki dashboard provides various diagnostic tools, which approach best balances the need for rapid troubleshooting with the imperative to protect user privacy and comply with data protection regulations. Option A. Enable full packet capture on all network segments for an extended period to thoroughly analyze all traffic and identify the source of the performance degradation. Option B. Deploy a third-party network monitoring solution that promises comprehensive visibility and deep packet inspection capabilities across the entire network. Option C. Assume that all data collected for internal troubleshooting purposes is exempt from privacy regulations and proceed with the most convenient data collection method. Option D. Utilize Meraki's built-in network health and traffic analysis tools, focusing on aggregated statistics, device status, and configuration logs to identify anomalies without inspecting individual packet contents. The correct answer is D. Utilize Meraki's built-in network health and traffic analysis tools, focusing on aggregated statistics, device status, and configuration logs to identify anomalies without inspecting individual packet contents. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the immediate need for network visibility and troubleshooting with the long-term implications of data privacy and regulatory compliance. The pressure to quickly diagnose a critical performance issue can lead to shortcuts that inadvertently violate data handling principles. Careful judgment is required to ensure that diagnostic actions are both effective and ethically sound, adhering to the principles of data minimization and lawful processing. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging Meraki's built-in diagnostic tools that are designed to collect only the necessary metadata for troubleshooting without exposing sensitive user data. This aligns with the principle of data minimization, a cornerstone of data privacy regulations. By focusing on network traffic patterns, device health, and configuration parameters, the solution provides actionable insights without compromising user privacy. This method represents best professional practice because it demonstrates a commitment to responsible data handling, minimizing the risk of privacy breaches and regulatory noncompliance. It prioritizes the collection of essential diagnostic information while respecting the confidentiality of end-user communications. Incorrect approach is analysis, an approach that involves indiscriminately capturing and analyzing raw packet data from all network segments, even if intended for a limited time, poses significant regulatory and ethical risks. This method violates the principle of data minimization by collecting far more information than is strictly necessary for troubleshooting. It increases the potential for accidental exposure of sensitive personal data, such as login credentials, financial information, or private communications, which could lead to severe privacy breaches and substantial fines under relevant data protection laws. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on third-party tools that are not vetted for their data handling practices or compliance with relevant regulations. Such tools might inadvertently store or transmit sensitive data to unsecure locations, or they may not have adequate anonymization or encryption mechanisms in place. This introduces an unacceptable level of risk and a lack of control over data, potentially leading to a breach of trust and regulatory violations. A further incorrect approach is to assume that because the data is for internal troubleshooting, it falls outside the scope of privacy regulation. This is a dangerous misconception. Even internal data collection and processing must adhere to principles of necessity, proportionality, and security. Failing to treat internal diagnostic data with the same rigor as external data can lead to unintentional noncompliance and ethical lapses. Professional reasoning. professionals should adopt a proactive and principle-based approach to network diagnostics. This involves understanding the capabilities of their tools, such as Cisco Meraki's platform, and how they can be used to gather necessary information while respecting privacy. Before initiating any diagnostic activity, professionals should ask, what is the minimum data required to solve this problem? And how can I collect this data in a way that minimizes privacy risks? They should also be aware of and adhere to organizational policies regarding data handling and privacy, and consult with legal or compliance teams when in doubt. This systematic approach ensures that technical solutions are implemented responsibly and ethically. Question 6. The investigation demonstrates that users are reporting intermittent slowness and dropped connection across multiple Meraki-managed sites. The network administrator needs to efficiently diagnose and resolve the issue. Which of the following approaches best aligns with best practices for process optimization in this scenario? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of Meraki dashboard event logs, network health dashboard, and client connectivity data for each affected site, correlating reported issues with observed network behavior and performance metrics to identify potential patterns or anomalies before implementing any changes. Option B. Deploy a new, more powerful Meraki firewall appliance to all affected sites, believing that the current hardware is insufficient to handle the network traffic. Option C. Immediately reconfigure all Meraki firewall rules and access policies across all affected sites, assuming a security policy misconfiguration is the root cause. Option D. Advise all users to restart their devices and clear their browser cache, attributing the problem solely to client-side issues without verifying network performance. The correct answer is C. Immediately reconfigure all Meraki firewall rules and access policies across all affected sites, assuming a security policy misconfiguration is the root cause. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network management, where a perceived performance issue requires a systematic approach to identify the root cause. The challenge lies in avoiding premature conclusions and ensuring that troubleshooting steps are efficient, effective, and adhere to best practices for network operations and security. Without a structured methodology, teams can waste valuable time on unproductive tasks, potentially impacting business continuity and user experience. The pressure to resolve issues quickly can lead to hasty decisions, which might overlook critical diagnostic steps or introduce new problems. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased, data-driven investigation that begins with understanding the scope and impact of the reported issue. This includes gathering detailed information from users, checking system logs, and performing baseline performance checks. The subsequent steps focus on isolating the problem by systematically testing different network components and configurations. This methodical process, often referred to as a top-down or bottom-up approach depending on the initial hypothesis, ensures that all potential causes are considered and eliminated logically. For Cisco Meraki solutions, this would involve leveraging the Meraki dashboard's extensive monitoring and troubleshooting tools, such as live tools, event logs, and network health dashboards, to gather real-time data and identify anomalies. This aligns with the principle of efficient resource utilization and minimizing disruption, which are key operational objectives. Adherence to established ITIL or similar frameworks for incident management further reinforces this structured approach, ensuring accountability and clear documentation. Incorrect approach is analysis. An incorrect approach would be to immediately assume a specific component is at fault without proper investigation. For example, if the issue is reported as slow internet, immediately concluding that the firewall is misconfigured or the WAN link is saturated without verifying other potential causes like client-side issues, DNS problems, or application-specific bottlenecks, is a failure of systematic troubleshooting. This hasty assumption can lead to unnecessary configuration changes that might not resolve the actual problem and could even introduce new ones, violating the principle of least privilege and potentially impacting network security or stability. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or user complaints without corroborating with objective network data. This can lead to chasing phantom issues or misallocating resources. For instance, if users report slow Wi-Fi, but network monitoring shows normal client connectivity and sufficient bandwidth, focusing solely on Wi-Fi APs without investigating potential upstream issues or client device problems would be inefficient and unprofessional. This also fails to leverage the diagnostic capabilities of the Meraki platform effectively. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured incident response framework. This involves 1. Identification and logging of the issue, gathering initial details. 2. Categorization and prioritization based on impact and urgency. 3. Initial diagnosis and investigation using available tools and data. 4. Escalation if necessary with clear documentation of steps taken. 5. Resolution and recovery. 6. Post-incident review to identify lessons learned and prevent recurrence. For Meraki solutions, this means becoming proficient with the Meraki dashboard's diagnostic features and understanding how to interpret the data presented to guide troubleshooting efforts. Always start with the simplest explanations and progressively move to more complex ones, using data to validate each hypothesis. Question 7. Upon reviewing the proposed deployment of Cisco Meraki devices for enhanced network visibility and security across multiple branch offices, what is the most critical step to ensure compliance with data protection regulations regarding the collection and processing of network traffic data? Option A. Focus solely on the technical performance benefits of the Meraki solution, deferring any regulatory compliance discussions to the legal department at a later stage. Option B. Conduct a data protection impact assessment, DPIA, to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks associated with the data collected and processed by the Meraki solution. Option C. Assume that Meraki's built-in security features are sufficient to meet all regulatory data protection requirements without further investigation. Option D. Proceed with the deployment and address any potential data protection concerns that may arise after the system is operational. Correct answer is B. Conduct a data protection impact assessment, DPIA, to identify and mitigate potential privacy risks associated with the data collected and processed by the Meraki solution. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid deployment of new technology and the imperative to maintain regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data privacy and security. The Cisco Meraki Solutions specialist must balance the business need for enhanced network visibility and control with the legal obligations to protect sensitive information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the implementation of Meraki's advanced features does not inadvertently lead to non-compliance with relevant data protection laws. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape before and during deployment. By proactively identifying and mitigating potential compliance risks associated with data collection, processing, and storage through Meraki devices, the specialist ensures that the solution adheres to the principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and security by design. This aligns with the spirit and letter of data protection regulations, fostering trust and avoiding legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves deploying the solution without a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment would fail to identify potential risks to individual privacy. This could lead to the unauthorized collection or processing of personal data, violating principles of lawful processing and transparency. Another incorrect approach, such as assuming that Meraki's default security settings are sufficient for all regulatory requirements, overlooks the need for tailored configurations based on specific data types and jurisdictional mandates, potentially exposing sensitive data to breaches. Finally, an approach that delays addressing compliance concerns until after deployment risks significant remediation efforts, fines, and reputational damage, demonstrating a failure to integrate compliance into the project lifecycle. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the specific data protection laws applicable to the organization's operations and the data processed by the network. Before implementing any new technology, a thorough assessment of potential compliance implications should be conducted. This includes identifying what data will be collected, how it will be used, who will have access to it, and how it will be secured. Regular audits and reviews of the deployed solution are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance as regulations evolve and the network environment changes. Question 8. The risk matrix shows a moderate risk associated with the network's authentication configuration, yet the client is pushing for immediate deployment to meet a critical business deadline. The project timeline does not explicitly account for extended security validation cycles beyond initial setup. What is the most professional and compliant approach to address this situation? Option A. Proceed with the deployment as requested by the client, documenting their request and acceptance of the identified moderate risk for authentication configuration. Option B. Delegate the decision of whether to proceed with deployment to a junior team member to avoid personal responsibility for potential security issues. Option C. Inform the client that the security validation for authentication must be completed as per best practices and regulatory expectations, even if it means a slight delay, and propose a revised timeline. Option D. Implement a temporary, less secure authentication method that can be quickly deployed, with a plan to upgrade to the fully validated method post-deployment. The correct answer is A. Proceed with the deployment as requested by the client, documenting their request and acceptance of the identified moderate risk for authentication configuration. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common implementation challenge where a client's desire for rapid deployment conflicts with the need for thorough security validation. The professional is tasked with balancing business urgency against regulatory compliance and the inherent risks of deploying a network without complete assurance of its security posture. The challenge lies in the potential for misinterpreting the acceptable risk threshold and the downstream consequences of a security breach, which could lead to significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust, all of which are amplified by regulatory scrutiny. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves prioritizing the completion of the security validation process, even if it introduces a slight delay. This aligns with best professional practice by adhering to the principle of security by design and ensuring that the deployed solution meets the established security requirements and regulatory mandates. Specifically, in the context of the 500-220 Cisco Meraki Solutions Specialist exam, which implicitly assumes adherence to general IT best practices and potentially specific regional data protection regulations. Though not explicitly stated for a single jurisdiction, the principles are universal. This approach demonstrates due diligence. It prevents the premature introduction of vulnerabilities that could be exploited, thereby safeguarding the client's data and operations. This proactive stance minimizes the likelihood of future security incidents and the associated regulatory repercussions. Incorrect approach is analysis. Deploying the network without completing the security validation, despite the risk matrix indicating a moderate risk, represents a failure to uphold professional responsibility. This approach disregards the potential for unforeseen vulnerabilities and the client's obligation to maintain a secure environment, which is often a prerequisite for regulatory compliance. It prioritizes expediency over security, creating a direct ethical and regulatory risk. Accepting the client's request to bypass specific validation steps based solely on their urgency, without a formal risk acceptance process that includes documented justification and management sign-off, is also professionally unsound. This can be interpreted as a failure to exercise independent professional judgment and could lead to the professional being held accountable for any subsequent security failures. It bypasses established security protocols and potentially violates internal organizational policies or industry standards for secure deployment. Relying solely on the risk matrix without considering the qualitative aspects of the identified risks and the potential impact of a breach is insufficient. The risk matrix is a tool, not a definitive guide for bypassing essential security steps. A moderate risk might still represent a significant threat that requires mitigation through thorough validation, especially when dealing with sensitive data or critical infrastructure. This approach demonstrates a superficial understanding of risk management and a lack of commitment to robust security practices. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a clear understanding of the project's security requirements and the applicable regulatory landscape. When faced with conflicting priorities, such as speed versus security, the professional must 1. Clearly articulate the risks associated with any proposed deviation from standard security procedures. 2. Document all discussions and decisions, including any risk acceptance by the client or stakeholders. 3. Escalate concerns to appropriate management or security teams if the client's requests compromise security or compliance. 4. Always advocate for the completion of essential security validation steps as a non-negotiable component of a secure and compliant deployment. 5. Maintain a commitment to professional ethics, prioritizing the integrity and security of the deployed solutions over short-term gains or client pressure. Question 9. Examination of the data shows that network performance metrics are consistently below optimal levels, impacting user experience. To address this, a proposal has been made to implement enhanced network monitoring to gather granular data for analysis and identify bottlenecks. However, the network carries sensitive user information. Which approach best balances the need for performance optimization with regulatory compliance and data privacy? Option A. Implement enhanced network monitoring tools configured to anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive user data before collection and analysis. Option B. Deploy enhanced network monitoring tools to collect all raw network traffic data, including unencrypted sensitive user information, for comprehensive analysis. Option C. Proceed with enhanced network monitoring without a data protection impact assessment, as the primary goal is performance improvement. Option D. Utilize enhanced network monitoring tools that capture sensitive data fields like user credentials and financial information, assuming this data is necessary for deep performance analysis. The correct answer is A. Implement enhanced network monitoring tools configured to anonymize or pseudonymize sensitive user data before collection and analysis. Explanation: scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network management, optimizing performance while adhering to strict data privacy regulations. The difficulty lies in balancing the need for comprehensive monitoring to identify performance bottlenecks with the imperative to protect sensitive user data. Misinterpreting or misapplying regulatory requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. The professional challenge is to implement effective process optimization without compromising compliance. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves anonymizing or pseudonymizing sensitive data before it is collected and analyzed for process optimization. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and privacy by design, which are fundamental to many data protection regulations. By removing or obscuring personally identifiable information, PI, the organization can gain insights into network performance without exposing individuals' private data. This demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical data handling, building trust with users and stakeholders. Incorrect approach is analysis. Collecting and analyzing raw, unencrypted network traffic data without explicit consent or a clear legal basis for processing PII is a direct violation of data privacy regulations. This approach fails to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to protect personal data, leading to potential breaches and unauthorized access. It also disregards the principle of purpose limitation, as data collected for performance monitoring might be used for other, unauthorized purposes. Implementing network monitoring tools that are not configured to exclude or anonymize sensitive data fields, such as user credentials or financial information, also constitutes a regulatory failure. This oversight can inadvertently lead to the collection and storage of highly sensitive PII, increasing the risk of a data breach and noncompliance with data protection laws. Failing to conduct a data protection impact assessment, DPIA, before implementing new monitoring processes that involve personal data is a procedural and regulatory failure. A DPIA is a mandatory requirement in many jurisdictions for processing activities likely to result in a high risk to individuals' rights and freedoms. Skipping this step means the potential risks to data privacy were not adequately identified or mitigated. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, prioritizing data privacy and regulatory compliance in all process optimization efforts. This involves understanding the specific data protection laws applicable to the organization's operations and customer base. For implementing any new monitoring or optimization strategy, a thorough assessment of potential privacy risks should be conducted. This includes identifying what data will be collected, how it will be used, and what safeguards are in place. Employing techniques like anonymization and pseudonymization, and ensuring that all data processing activities have a lawful basis and are conducted in accordance with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, are crucial. Regular training on data protection regulations and best practices is also essential for all personnel involved in network management and data handling. Question 10. Performance analysis shows a significant increase in latency and packet loss across the entire network, impacting user productivity. The network is managed using Cisco Meraki devices. What is the most effective initial step to diagnose the root cause of this widespread performance degradation? Option A. Focus troubleshooting efforts on individual end-user devices experiencing the worst performance. Option B. Review the network-wide event log and the client event log for any correlated events that occurred immediately before or during the onset of the performance issues. Option C. Immediately revert the most recent network-wide configuration changes made to the Meraki dashboard. Option D. Initiate a hardware diagnostic on all Meraki access points and switches, assuming a hardware failure. The correct answer is B. Review the network-wide event log and the client event log for any correlated events that occurred immediately before or during the onset of the performance issues. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network management where performance degradation impacts user experience and business operations. Professional challenge lies in accurately diagnosing the root cause of the performance issues within a Cisco Meraki environment, which relies on cloud-based management and integrated hardware. The urgency of resolving the issue, coupled with the potential for misinterpretation of telemetry data, necessitates a systematic and evidence-based approach. The pressure to provide a swift resolution without compromising network integrity or security adds to the complexity. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging the comprehensive visibility and diagnostic tools provided by the Cisco Meraki platform, specifically utilizing the network-wide event log and client event log to identify correlated events preceding the performance degradation is crucial. This method aligns with best practices for network troubleshooting by starting with broad system-level indicators and then drilling down to specific events and clients. The Meraki platform's event logs are designed to capture critical network state changes, configuration modifications, and potential anomalies, offering a direct pathway to identifying the initiating factor. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes data-driven decision-making and avoids speculative troubleshooting, which could lead to unintended consequences. It also adheres to the principle of least privilege and due diligence in network management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately reverting recent configuration changes without a thorough analysis of the event logs. This is a reactive and potentially disruptive measure. It fails to identify the actual root cause, meaning the underlying issue might persist or re-emerge. Ethically, this could be considered negligent if it leads to prolonged downtime or further performance issues due to an unaddressed problem. It also bypasses the systematic diagnostic process expected of a solution specialist. Another incorrect approach is to focus solely on individual client device performance metrics without correlating them to network-wide events. While client-side issues can contribute to perceived performance problems, this approach ignores the possibility of a systemic network issue that is affecting multiple clients. This can lead to wasted effort on individual troubleshooting when the problem lies at the network infrastructure level. It represents a failure in comprehensive network analysis and could be seen as a lack of due diligence. A third incorrect approach is to assume a hardware failure without any supporting evidence from the Meraki dashboard's hardware health indicators or event logs. This is speculative and can lead to unnecessary hardware replacement costs and downtime. It deviates from a methodical, evidence-based troubleshooting process and could be viewed as unprofessional if not supported by diagnostic data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such scenarios by first establishing a baseline of normal performance. When performance degrades, the immediate step is to consult the centralized management platform's diagnostic tools, such as event logs, to identify any correlated events. This systematic approach, starting from broad network events and narrowing down to specific issues, ensures that the root cause is accurately identified. If configuration changes are suspected, they should be investigated within the context of the event logs to understand their impact. Client-specific issues should only be investigated after network-wide factors have been ruled out or identified as contributing. This methodical process minimizes disruption, ensures efficient resolution, and upholds professional standards of care and due diligence in network management. Question 11. The audit findings indicate that the organization's use of Cisco Meraki devices for managing network access and traffic flow may not fully align with the data protection principles outlined in the relevant regulatory framework governing the handling of customer personal data. Specifically, the audit highlights concerns regarding the logging and retention of user activity data. Which of the following actions best addresses these findings in a compliant manner? Option A. Review the Cisco Meraki dashboard configurations to ensure that logging levels are set to the minimum required for operational troubleshooting and security monitoring, and that data retention policies are configured to comply with the specified regulatory retention periods, prioritizing data minimization and purpose limitation. Option B. Rely on the default logging and retention settings of the Cisco Meraki platform, assuming they are designed to meet general industry best practices for data protection. Option C. Disable detailed user activity logging on Meraki devices to reduce the amount of data stored, as this will minimize the risk of data breaches related to logged information. Option D. Increase the logging verbosity on all Meraki devices to capture the maximum amount of user activity data possible, as more data provides better forensic capabilities in case of a security incident. The correct answer is A. Review the Cisco Meraki dashboard configurations to ensure that logging levels are set to the minimum required for operational troubleshooting and security monitoring, and that data retention policies are configured to comply with the specified regulatory retention periods, prioritizing data minimization and purpose limitation. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential gap in how sensitive customer data is being protected within the organization's network infrastructure, specifically concerning the use of cloud-based Meraki devices. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency and the benefits of cloud management with stringent data privacy regulations. The network administrator must not only understand the technical capabilities of Meraki solutions, but also how these capabilities align with legal and regulatory obligations. The core challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulatory framework to a specific technical implementation, ensuring that the chosen configuration and operational practices meet compliance standards without unduly hindering network functionality. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the audit findings by proactively seeking to understand and implement the specific requirements of the relevant regulatory framework. This involves a thorough review of the organization's data handling policies in conjunction with the security features offered by Cisco Meraki. By focusing on the principles of data minimization, access control, and encryption as mandated by the regulatory framework, the administrator ensures that the network infrastructure is configured to protect sensitive data effectively. This demonstrates a commitment to compliance and a responsible approach to managing network security in a regulated environment. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical features of Meraki without considering the regulatory context is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a lack of understanding of the organization's legal obligations, leading to a potential violation of data privacy laws. For instance, implementing features without verifying their compliance with data residency requirements or without ensuring appropriate consent mechanisms for data processing would be a significant regulatory failure. Another incorrect approach might involve assuming that default Meraki security settings are sufficient for compliance. This is a critical ethical and regulatory failure, as it abdicates responsibility for due diligence and proactive risk management, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties and reputational damage. Relying on vendor assurances without independent verification against specific regulatory mandates is also a failure, as the ultimate responsibility for compliance rests with the organization. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the regulatory landscape first. This involves identifying all applicable data protection laws and guidelines. Subsequently, they must assess how the chosen technology, in this case, Cisco Meraki, can be configured and utilized to meet these requirements. This assessment should involve a risk-based approach, identifying potential compliance gaps and developing mitigation strategies. Regular review and updates of configurations and policies are also crucial, especially as regulations evolve or new features are introduced. Collaboration with legal and compliance teams is essential to ensure a comprehensive and accurate interpretation of regulatory obligations. Question 12. Analysis of a scenario where a new branch office requires immediate network connectivity, and the IT team is tasked with deploying Cisco Meraki solutions. The deployment timeline is aggressive, and there is pressure to bring the office online within 48 hours. The team has received the Meraki hardware and basic setup guides. What is the most professionally responsible approach to ensure both rapid deployment and robust security, adhering to U.S. regulatory expectations for network security? Option A. Bypass independent security validation and solely trust the vendor's documentation and assurances regarding the security of their Meraki solution for immediate deployment. Option B. Deploy the Meraki devices in a controlled staging environment first. Conduct thorough security configuration audits, vulnerability scans, and policy compliance checks before integrating them into the production network, even if it slightly extends the initial deployment timeline. Option C. Immediately deploy the Meraki devices into the production network, configuring basic connectivity and relying on the vendor's default security settings to expedite the process. Option D. Install the Meraki devices directly into the production network and then schedule a security audit for the following week, assuming the vendor's out-of-the-box security is sufficient for initial operations. The correct answer is C. Immediately deploy the Meraki devices into the production network, configuring basic connectivity and relying on the vendor's default security settings to expedite the process. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network deployments, balancing the need for rapid deployment and user access with the imperative to maintain security and compliance. The pressure to quickly bring a new branch online, coupled with the inherent trust placed in a new vendor solution, can lead to overlooking critical security configurations. The professional challenge lies in resisting the urge for expediency and ensuring that security best practices and regulatory requirements are not compromised, even under time constraints. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is the United States, and therefore, all regulatory and ethical considerations must align with U.S. federal and state laws, as well as industry best practices relevant to U.S. organizations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment that prioritizes security validation before granting full network access. This aligns with the principle of least privilege and defense in depth, fundamental tenets of U.S. cybersecurity frameworks like NIST Cybersecurity Framework. By initially isolating the new Meraki devices and performing thorough security audits, including vulnerability scanning and configuration verification, against established security policies, the organization ensures that no inherent security weaknesses are introduced into the production environment. This proactive stance is crucial for preventing potential data breaches and maintaining compliance with regulations such as HIPAA, if applicable to the organization's industry, or PCI DSS, which mandate robust security controls. The use of a staging environment for initial testing further reinforces this by preventing any potential misconfigurations from impacting live operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. Implementing the Meraki solution directly into the production network without prior security validation is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses essential security checks, potentially exposing the network to immediate threats and violating the duty of care to protect sensitive data. Such an approach disregards established cybersecurity best practices and could lead to non-compliance with data protection laws. Deploying the Meraki solution with default security settings and relying solely on the vendor's basic security features without custom configuration or auditing is also professionally unacceptable. Default settings are often not robust enough for enterprise environments and may not meet specific compliance requirements. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to adapt security to the organization's unique risk profile and regulatory obligations. Relying solely on the vendor's assurance of security without independent verification is another critical failure. While vendors provide security features, the responsibility for securing the network ultimately rests with the deploying organization. This approach abdicates that responsibility and fails to meet the professional standard of independent risk assessment and mitigation. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network deployments. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their impact, and implementing controls to mitigate them. A structured deployment process, including thorough planning, testing in a controlled environment, phased rollout, and continuous monitoring is essential. When introducing new technologies, especially from third-party vendors, independent validation of security configurations and adherence to organizational security policies and relevant U.S. regulations are paramount. This ensures that the technology enhances, rather than compromises, the organization's security posture and compliance status. Question 13. The assessment process reveals that a healthcare organization is deploying a new Cisco Meraki network to support patient care and administrative functions. The organization handles sensitive patient data, and the IT team is focused on implementing comprehensive network monitoring and logging to detect any security threats. Given the U.S. regulatory environment governing healthcare data, what is the most appropriate approach for configuring Meraki's monitoring and logging features to ensure both security and compliance? Option A. Prioritize capturing detailed packet content for all network traffic to enable deep forensic analysis of any security incident, with logs retained indefinitely. Option B. Configure logging to capture all network traffic metadata and user activity, ensuring extensive audit trails for any potential security investigation, while implementing strict role-based access controls for log access. Option C. Implement logging that focuses on security-relevant events and anomalies, collecting only the metadata necessary for threat detection and incident response, and ensuring logs are retained according to a defined policy aligned with U.S. healthcare data regulations. Option D. Configure logging to capture basic network connectivity and device status, assuming that detailed traffic analysis is unnecessary if strong perimeter security is in place. The correct answer is B. Configure logging to capture all network traffic metadata and user activity, ensuring extensive audit trails for any potential security investigation, while implementing strict role-based access controls for log access. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in network deployments, balancing the immediate need for robust security with the long-term implications of data privacy and compliance. In the context of Cisco Meraki solutions, this often involves configuring network access controls, monitoring, and logging. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the relevant regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be U.S. federal regulations pertaining to data privacy and network security, such as those influenced by HIPAA or similar standards for sensitive data. A solution specialist must not only understand the technical capabilities of Meraki, but also how these capabilities intersect with legal and ethical obligations. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive understanding of the data being transmitted and stored, and how it aligns with applicable U.S. data privacy regulations. This involves implementing security measures that are not only effective against threats, but also designed with privacy principles in mind, such as data minimization and purpose limitation. By ensuring that logging and monitoring are configured to capture only necessary information for security and operational purposes, and that access to this data is strictly controlled, the specialist upholds both technical integrity and regulatory compliance. This proactive, privacy-by-design methodology is best professional practice as it mitigates risk, builds trust with stakeholders, and avoids potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on maximizing data collection for potential future forensic analysis, without a clear regulatory justification or a robust data access control policy, risks violating U.S. data privacy laws. Such an approach could lead to the unauthorized collection or retention of personally identifiable information, PI, or protected health information, PHI, which are subject to strict regulations. This constitutes a regulatory failure by exceeding the scope of permissible data collection and a potential ethical failure by infringing on individual privacy rights. Another incorrect approach might involve implementing security measures that inadvertently create blind spots in monitoring or logging, thereby hindering the ability to detect and respond to security incidents or compliance breaches. This represents a technical failure that can lead to regulatory noncompliance if an incident occurs and the necessary audit trails are absent. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of diligence in ensuring the security and integrity of the network and the data it handles. Finally, an approach that relies on generic security best practices without specific consideration for the types of data handled and the applicable U.S. regulatory landscape is insufficient. While general security is important, it does not guarantee compliance with specific legal mandates. This can result in regulatory gaps and potential penalties if the implemented controls do not meet the explicit requirements of relevant U.S. laws. The professional reasoning process should involve a thorough assessment of the client's data handling practices, identification of all applicable U.S. federal and state regulations, and a mapping of Meraki solution capabilities to meet these requirements. This includes understanding data classification, consent mechanisms, data retention policies, and access control requirements. The specialist should then design and implement a solution that not only addresses security threats, but also embeds privacy and compliance by design, with continuous review and adaptation as regulations evolve. Question 14. Governance review demonstrates that a new branch office requires immediate network connectivity to support critical business operations. The IT team is tasked with deploying a Cisco Meraki solution to provide this connectivity. Considering the need for rapid deployment, which of the following approaches best balances business needs with regulatory compliance and security best practices? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment for the branch office. Define specific security and compliance requirements based on anticipated data handling, and configure the Meraki solution to meet these defined requirements before full deployment. Option B. Replicate the security configuration of the headquarters network for the new branch office's Meraki solution, assuming similar data handling and regulatory obligations. Option C. Deploy the Meraki solution with default security settings to ensure immediate connectivity, and schedule a security and compliance review for the branch office at a later date. Option D. Prioritize network performance and user experience for the new branch office by implementing the Meraki solution quickly, deferring detailed security and compliance checks until after the initial operational phase. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment for the branch office. Define specific security and compliance requirements based on anticipated data handling, and configure the Meraki solution to meet these defined requirements before full deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in network deployments where a new branch office requires network connectivity. The professional challenge lies in balancing the immediate business need for connectivity with the imperative to adhere to established security policies and regulatory compliance frameworks, specifically within the context of the 500-220 Cisco Meraki Solutions Specialist Exams Implied Jurisdiction, which, for this exam, is generally understood to align with common global best practices and U.S.-centric regulatory principles, unless otherwise specified, focusing on data privacy and security. The pressure to deploy quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise security and compliance, potentially exposing the organization to data breaches, regulatory fines, and reputational damage. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a phased deployment that prioritizes security and compliance from the outset. This includes conducting a thorough risk assessment, defining clear security requirements based on the sensitivity of data to be handled at the branch, and ensuring that the Meraki solution is configured to meet these requirements and any applicable regulatory mandates, e.g., data privacy laws like GDPR or CCPA, if applicable to the organization's operations. This approach aligns with best practices for secure network design and deployment, ensuring that security is not an afterthought, but an integral part of the solution. It demonstrates a commitment to due diligence and proactive risk management, which are fundamental to maintaining a secure and compliant IT infrastructure. Incorrect approaches analysis. Deploying the Meraki solution with default security settings and without a specific security policy review for the branch office is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Default settings are rarely optimal for security and may not meet specific compliance needs, leaving sensitive data vulnerable. This approach neglects the principle of least privilege and adequate security controls, which are often mandated by regulations. Implementing the Meraki solution with a focus solely on network performance and user experience, deferring security and compliance checks to a later date, represents a critical failure in risk management. This move fast and break things mentality is antithetical to regulatory compliance, which demands that security and privacy be considered throughout the lifecycle of a system. It creates a window of vulnerability that could be exploited, leading to breaches and non-compliance. Configuring the Meraki solution based on the security practices of the existing headquarters network, without assessing the specific data handling and regulatory requirements of the new branch office, is also a failure. Each branch may have unique data processing activities, or be subject to different regional regulations. A one-size-fits-all approach to security and compliance is insufficient and can lead to gaps in protection and adherence to specific legal obligations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to network deployment. This involves understanding the business requirements, identifying potential risks, including security and compliance risks, and implementing controls to mitigate those risks. Before any deployment, a clear understanding of the data to be processed, the regulatory landscape, and the organization's security policies is essential. The Meraki solution should be configured to align with these requirements, with security and compliance being primary considerations throughout the design, implementation, and ongoing management phases. Regular reviews and audits are crucial to ensure continued adherence to policies and regulations. Question 15. Research into the deployment of Cisco Meraki network solutions within a U.S.-based healthcare organization reveals a need to implement robust security measures. Considering the organization's handling of protected health information, which approach best ensures compliance with relevant U.S. federal and state data privacy regulations, such as HIPAA and CCPA, while effectively securing the network infrastructure. Option A. Deploy the Meraki solution with default security settings and rely on post-deployment security audits to identify and rectify any potential privacy concerns related to PHI. Option B. Enable all available network monitoring and logging features to capture the maximum amount of data for potential forensic analysis, assuming that security logs will inherently protect patient privacy. Option C. Implement comprehensive network segmentation and granular access controls, ensuring that only authorized personnel can access PHI and that monitoring tools are configured to collect only necessary metadata, adhering to the principle of data minimization. Option D. Focus solely on perimeter security and firewall rules, assuming that internal network traffic containing PHI is adequately protected by these measures, without specific segmentation or access control policies for sensitive data. The correct answer is C. Implement comprehensive network segmentation and granular access controls, ensuring that only authorized personnel can access PHI and that monitoring tools are configured to collect only necessary metadata, adhering to the principle of data minimization. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the technical implementation of network security solutions with the stringent data privacy regulations mandated by the exam's jurisdiction. Specifically, the Cisco Meraki Solutions Specialist exam, when focusing on regulatory compliance, implies adherence to the relevant data protection laws of the primary market for such solutions, which is typically the United States, governed by frameworks like HIPAA for healthcare data, CCPA for California consumer data, and general FTC guidelines for consumer privacy. The challenge lies in ensuring that the deployment of network monitoring and access control features, while enhancing security, does not inadvertently lead to the collection, storage, or processing of sensitive personal information without proper consent or legal basis, thereby risking significant legal penalties and reputational damage. The correct approach, which involves implementing network segmentation and access controls that are strictly aligned with the principle of least privilege and data minimization, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the spirit and letter of U.S. data privacy laws. By segmenting networks, sensitive data is isolated, reducing the attack surface and limiting the scope of potential breaches. Implementing access controls ensures that only authorized personnel can access specific data, further protecting privacy. This proactive stance on data protection, focusing on preventing unauthorized access and minimizing data exposure from the outset, is a cornerstone of regulatory compliance and ethical data stewardship. It demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding user information, which is a legal and ethical imperative. An incorrect approach that involves broadly enabling all network monitoring features without a clear understanding of the data being collected and its potential sensitivity is professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the inadvertent collection of personally identifiable information (PIA) or protected health information (FI) without the necessary consent or safeguards, violating regulations such as HIPAA or CCPA. Another incorrect approach, which is to rely solely on post-deployment security audits to identify privacy violations, is also flawed. While audits are important, they are reactive. A proactive approach that integrates privacy considerations into the design and implementation phases is far more effective and legally sound. Failing to conduct a thorough data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, before deployment, or assuming that standard security measures are sufficient to meet all privacy obligations, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and an insufficient understanding of the specific data privacy requirements applicable to the organization's operations and the data it handles. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multifaceted approach. Firstly, a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape, e.g., U.S. federal and state data privacy laws, is paramount. Secondly, a comprehensive data privacy impact assessment, DPIA, should be conducted to identify potential privacy risks associated with the proposed network solutions. Thirdly, the principle of privacy by design and privacy by default should be integrated into the solution architecture, ensuring that privacy is considered from the initial stages of planning and deployment. This includes implementing data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust access controls. Finally, ongoing monitoring, regular audits, and a clear incident response plan for data breaches are essential to maintain compliance and protect sensitive information. Question 16. The efficiency study reveals that the time taken to onboard new branch offices using the Cisco Meraki platform has significantly increased over the past quarter, impacting deployment timelines. Which of the following actions would best address this process optimization challenge? Option A. Implement a series of ad hoc configuration changes across the existing Meraki infrastructure in an attempt to speed up the onboarding process for future deployments. Option B. Conduct a detailed analysis of the Meraki dashboard logs, network configuration templates, and the end-to-end provisioning workflow to identify specific points of delay and potential automation opportunities. Option C. Instruct the deployment team to bypass standard security checks and change control procedures to expedite the provisioning process. Option D. Immediately hire additional network engineers to accelerate the manual configuration and deployment tasks for new branches. The correct answer is B. Conduct a detailed analysis of the Meraki dashboard logs, network configuration templates, and the end-to-end provisioning workflow to identify specific points of delay and potential automation opportunities. Explanation. The efficiency study reveals a bottleneck in the network provisioning process for new branch offices. This scenario is professionally challenging because delays in provisioning directly impact business operations and revenue generation, and the pressure to resolve these issues quickly can lead to rushed decisions. Careful judgment is required to balance speed with adherence to established procedures and security best practices. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it involves a systematic, data-driven investigation into the root cause of the provisioning delays. By analyzing logs, configuration workflows, and team collaboration, it identifies specific areas for improvement within the existing Meraki deployment and operational procedures. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and operational excellence, ensuring that solutions are sustainable and address the underlying issues rather than just symptoms. Furthermore, it respects the established change management processes and security policies, preventing the introduction of new vulnerabilities or compliance risks. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on increasing the number of staff involved in provisioning without understanding the root cause is professionally unacceptable. This can lead to increased costs, potential for human error due to lack of clear process, and does not address the systemic inefficiency. It fails to leverage the capabilities of the Meraki platform for automation or streamlined workflows. Another incorrect approach that bypasses standard security and change control procedures to expedite provisioning is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could expose the network to security risks, violate data privacy regulations, and undermine the integrity of the IT infrastructure. It demonstrates a disregard for established governance and risk management frameworks. A third incorrect approach that involves implementing unproven or undocumented configuration changes without proper testing or rollback plans is also professionally unacceptable. This introduces instability into the network, increases the likelihood of outages, and makes troubleshooting significantly more difficult. It violates principles of sound network engineering and operational discipline, The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the business impact of the inefficiency. 2. Gathering data and evidence to identify the root cause. 3. Evaluating potential solutions against established operational, security, and compliance requirements. 4. Prioritizing solutions that offer sustainable improvements and minimize risk. 5. Implementing changes through a controlled process with proper documentation and testing. 6. Monitoring the impact of changes and iterating as necessary. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that a new branch office network, utilizing Cisco Meraki devices, is experiencing intermittent connectivity issues and has been flagged for potential unauthorized access attempts by the Security Operations Center. The initial deployment focused heavily on rapid provisioning to meet business deadlines, with security configurations being a secondary consideration. Network Administrator is now tasked with resolving these issues and ensuring the network's security posture is robust. Which of the following approaches best addresses the immediate security concerns and establishes a foundation for ongoing network integrity? Option A. Prioritize restoring full network connectivity by disabling advanced security features like granular ACLs and WPA3 Enterprise until the connectivity issues are resolved. Then re-enable them. Option B. Rely on Meraki's cloud-based security features to automatically detect and mitigate threats, focusing solely on troubleshooting the connectivity problems without altering existing configurations. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive security audit of the Meraki dashboard and network devices, reconfigure access policies, implement strong authentication, and segment the network using VLAN and ACLs before fully restoring all services. Option D. Immediately disable all remote access to the Meraki dashboard and revert to factory defaults for all network devices to eliminate any potential unauthorized configurations. The correct answer is D. Immediately disable all remote access to the Meraki dashboard and revert to factory defaults for all network devices to eliminate any potential unauthorized configurations. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in network deployments, balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative of adhering to security best practices and regulatory compliance. In the context of Cisco Meraki, which emphasizes cloud-managed simplicity, it's easy to overlook the foundational security configurations that are critical for protecting sensitive data and maintaining network integrity. This scenario is professionally challenging because the pressure to get a new branch operational quickly can lead to shortcuts that have significant long-term security and compliance implications. The move fast and break things mentality, while sometimes applicable in software development, is detrimental in network infrastructure, where security vulnerabilities can have immediate and severe consequences. The correct approach, which involves a thorough review and implementation of security policies before full deployment, represents best professional practice because it aligns with the principle of security by design. This proactive stance minimizes the attack surface from the outset. Specifically, for a Cisco Meraki deployment, this would involve configuring features like strong authentication, e.g., WPA3 Enterprise with Radius, Granular Access Control Lists, ACL, to segment traffic and limit lateral movement, and ensuring that all network devices are running the latest firmware to patch known vulnerabilities. Adherence to these practices is not just a technical recommendation, but often a requirement under various data protection regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, depending on the jurisdiction. Though for this exam we focus on the principles applicable to a general business context without specifying a single jurisdiction unless explicitly stated. The goal is to build a secure foundation that can be audited and verified, ensuring compliance with internal policies and external regulations. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over security by enabling default configurations without customization is professionally unacceptable. This often leads to weak security postures, such as using default administrator passwords or open Wi-Fi networks, which are direct violations of basic security hygiene and can expose the organization to significant risks of unauthorized access and data breaches. Such an approach fails to meet the due diligence expected of a network professional and could lead to regulatory penalties if sensitive data is compromised. Another incorrect approach, which is to postpone security configuration until after the network is operational, is also professionally unsound. This creates a window of vulnerability where the network is exposed to threats before adequate defenses are in place. It also increases the complexity of remediation, as security measures might need to be retrofitted into an already live and potentially compromised environment. This reactive approach is less effective and more costly than a proactive one. Finally, an approach that relies solely on the cloud-managed nature of Meraki to provide security without implementing specific network-level security policies is a misunderstanding of the platform's capabilities. While Meraki's cloud management offers centralized control and visibility, it requires explicit configuration of security features to be effective. The platform provides the tools, but the professional is responsible for applying them correctly to meet specific security requirements. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a phased deployment strategy. This includes a planning phase where security requirements are defined, a configuration phase where security features are meticulously set up and tested in a controlled environment, and finally, a deployment phase where the secured network is brought online. Regular security audits and vulnerability assessments should be part of the ongoing operational lifecycle. Question 18. Which approach would be most ethically sound and professionally responsible when a client requests a network configuration that, while technically achievable with Cisco Meraki, introduces potential security vulnerabilities and deviates from recommended best practices for data privacy compliance? Option A. Implement the requested configuration exactly as specified by the client to ensure immediate satisfaction and secure the project, with a verbal assurance that it will be monitored. Option B. Proceed with the client's requested configuration, but document the deviation from best practices in a way that absolves the consulting firm of any future liability, without further discussion with the client. Option C. Propose an alternative configuration that addresses the client's stated needs while adhering to security best practices and data privacy regulations, clearly explaining the risks of the client's original request and the benefits of the proposed alternative. Option D. Recommend a highly complex and feature-rich solution that far exceeds the client's stated requirements and budget, assuming this will inherently provide superior security and compliance. The correct answer is A. Implement the requested configuration exactly as specified by the client to ensure immediate satisfaction and secure the project, with a verbal assurance that it will be monitored. Explanation. The scenario presents a common ethical dilemma in IT consulting, where a client requests a solution that, while technically feasible and meeting immediate needs, may not align with long-term best practices or could potentially expose the client to future risks. The challenge lies in balancing client satisfaction with professional responsibility to provide sound, sustainable advice. The pressure to secure a deal or please a demanding client can lead to compromising ethical standards. The correct approach prioritizes the client's long-term interests and adheres to professional codes of conduct by recommending a solution that is not only functional but also secure, scalable, and compliant with relevant regulations. This involves transparently communicating potential risks and offering alternatives that mitigate them, even if it means a more complex or initially more expensive solution. This aligns with the principles of professional integrity and fiduciary duty to the client, ensuring that the proposed solution serves their business objectives without introducing undue vulnerabilities. An incorrect approach that solely focuses on fulfilling the immediate, potentially flawed request without addressing underlying risks would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance if the requested configuration violates data privacy laws or security standards. Ethically, it represents a failure to act in the client's best interest, potentially exposing them to future security breaches, operational inefficiencies, or costly remediation efforts. Another incorrect approach, which involves over-engineering a solution beyond the client's stated needs or budget without clear justification, could be seen as a misallocation of resources and a failure to understand the client's practical requirements, potentially damaging the client relationship. Professionals should approach such situations by first thoroughly understanding the client's business objectives and constraints. They should then assess the technical feasibility and implications of the client's request against industry best practices, security frameworks, and relevant regulations. Open and honest communication is paramount, involving the presentation of multiple options, clearly outlining the pros and cons of each, including potential risks and long-term implications. The decision-making process should be guided by a commitment to providing the most beneficial and responsible solution for the client, even if it requires educating the client on why their initial request might be suboptimal. Question 19. The review process indicates that a new Cisco Meraki network infrastructure is ready for deployment across multiple branch offices to enhance security and performance. The current network is stable, and any disruption to services must be minimized. Which deployment strategy best balances rapid implementation with operational stability and risk mitigation? Option A. Conduct a phased rollout, starting with a pilot group of branch offices, followed by extensive testing and monitoring before proceeding to subsequent phases. Option B. Implement the new Meraki infrastructure across all branch offices simultaneously after a brief internal review of the configuration. Option C. Deploy the Meraki infrastructure only in a lab environment and postpone live deployment until all potential edge cases are theoretically resolved. Option D. Prioritize the technical configuration of the Meraki devices and initiate deployment without a defined rollback plan, assuming no issues will arise. The correct answer is B. Implement the new Meraki infrastructure across all branch offices simultaneously after a brief internal review of the configuration. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in network management, where a new deployment needs to be integrated without disrupting existing services. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for rapid deployment with the imperative to maintain service availability and compliance with operational procedures. Careful judgment is required to select a deployment strategy that minimizes risk. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a phased rollout and thorough testing in a controlled environment. This aligns with established ITIL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library, principles for change management, which emphasize minimizing disruption and risk. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of test and production, only after extensive validation in a staging or pilot environment, thereby reducing the likelihood of widespread service degradation or outages. This methodical approach also supports auditability and accountability, as each stage of the deployment can be documented and verified. An incorrect approach that involves immediate, full-scale deployment without prior testing in a live, albeit limited, environment fails to adequately assess the impact on existing services. This could lead to unforeseen compatibility issues or performance bottlenecks, directly violating the operational objective of maintaining service continuity. From a regulatory perspective, depending on the specific services being impacted, e.g., financial transactions, critical infrastructure monitoring, such a failure could have significant compliance implications, potentially leading to breaches of service-level agreements, SLAs, or even regulatory penalties if the services are deemed critical. Another incorrect approach, which involves delaying the deployment indefinitely due to minor concerns, demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and can hinder business objectives that rely on the new technology. A caution is necessary, and an inability to move forward with a well-planned deployment can be as detrimental as a rushed one. This approach might also be seen as inefficient resource utilization and a failure to adapt to evolving technological needs. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on the technical configuration without considering the operational impact and rollback strategy, overlooks a crucial aspect of change management. A robust rollback plan is essential to quickly revert to a stable state if the deployment encounters critical issues. Without this, a failed deployment can result in extended downtime and significant business disruption, again potentially leading to SLA breaches and reputational damage. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough risk assessment of the proposed change. This includes identifying potential impacts on existing services, security, and performance. Following this, a phased deployment strategy, incorporating pilot testing and comprehensive monitoring, should be developed. A clear rollback plan must be in place before any deployment commences. Regular communication with stakeholders regarding the deployment progress and any encountered issues is also paramount. This structured approach ensures that new technologies are integrated efficiently and effectively while safeguarding the integrity of existing operations. Question 20. The analysis reveals that a growing organization is experiencing increased network traffic and a rise in sophisticated cyber threats. The IT team is tasked with enhancing the network's security posture using their existing Cisco Meraki infrastructure. They are considering several strategies to achieve this. Which of the following represents the most effective and professionally sound approach to bolstering network security in this evolving environment? Option A. Focus solely on strengthening the perimeter firewall rules and deploying a single, robust antivirus solution across all endpoints, assuming internal threats are minimal and the current network architecture is inherently secure. Option B. Oversegment the network into numerous small, isolated segments, creating highly restrictive access controls that significantly limit intersegment communication, even for legitimate business functions. To minimize any potential attack surface, Option C. Defer any significant security enhancements until a major security incident occurs, as proactive measures can be costly and may not always prevent all breaches, opting instead to reactively address threats as they arise. Option D. Implement comprehensive network segmentation using VLAN and strict firewall policies to isolate critical systems and control inter-VLAN traffic, complemented by the proactive utilization of Meraki's advanced security features like intrusion prevention and content filtering, along with a commitment to regular security audits and policy reviews. The correct answer is D. Implement comprehensive network segmentation using VLAN and strict firewall policies to isolate critical systems and control inter-VLAN traffic, complemented by the proactive utilization of Meraki's advanced security features like intrusion prevention and content filtering, along with a commitment to regular security audits and policy reviews. Explanation: the scenario presents a common challenge in network management, balancing the need for robust security with the operational demands of a dynamic environment. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying security best practices, specifically regarding network segmentation and access control, within the context of Cisco Meraki's cloud-managed architecture. The requirement to maintain compliance with evolving security threats and potential regulatory expectations, though not explicitly stated as a specific jurisdiction for this exam. Best practices often align with general security principles that underpin many regulatory frameworks, necessitates a proactive and informed approach. The correct approach emphasizes a layered security strategy, leveraging Meraki's capabilities for granular policy enforcement and segmentation, implementing VLAN to isolate sensitive systems, and applying strict firewall rules to control inter-VLAN traffic is a fundamental best practice. This aligns with the principle of least privilege, ensuring that only necessary communication pathways are open. Furthermore, utilizing Meraki's advanced security features like intrusion prevention and content filtering, coupled with regular security audits and policy reviews, demonstrates a commitment to maintaining a secure posture. This proactive and defense-in-depth strategy is considered best professional practice because it directly addresses potential attack vectors and minimizes the impact of any security breach. It also facilitates easier compliance with general security standards that often mandate network segmentation and access control. An incorrect approach might involve a set it and forget it mentality, where initial configurations are never revisited. This fails to account for the evolving threat landscape and changes in network usage, leaving the organization vulnerable. Ethically, this demonstrates a lack of due diligence in protecting organizational data and user privacy. Another incorrect approach could be to oversegment the network to an impractical degree, hindering legitimate business operations and creating an unmanageable environment. While security is paramount, it must be balanced with usability. This approach, while well-intentioned, can lead to operational inefficiencies and user frustration, potentially causing users to circumvent security controls, thereby creating new vulnerabilities. A further incorrect approach might be to rely solely on perimeter security without considering internal threats or the security of endpoints, neglecting the importance of microsegmentation and internal access controls. This creates a false sense of security, as a breach at the perimeter would grant attackers relatively free rein within the network. The professional decision-making process should involve a thorough risk assessment, understanding the organization's critical assets and potential threats. This should be followed by designing a security architecture that aligns with business objectives and leverages the capabilities of the deployed technology. In this case, Cisco Meraki. Regular review and adaptation of security policies based on threat intelligence and network changes are crucial. Collaboration with stakeholders to ensure security measures do not unduly impede operations is also a key aspect of effective network security management.